Why does a town fear a woman who runs before dawn? The mist wrapped around Silver Creek like a shroud, thick and cold, clinging to the mountains with the stubbornness of something that didn't want to let go. It was that strange hour before sunrise when the world exists in shades of gray, when the line between night and day blurs into something uncertain. The streets were empty, the shops were dark, and through it all a woman ran. Her name was Maya Cross, though most people in town didn't know it, didn't want to know it. They just called her that woman with the dog, the dangerous one, the one who lived in the old cabin at the edge of the woods, the one who never smiled, never spoke, never stopped to make small talk at the grocery store. 32 years old, but she moved like someone carrying decades of weight on her shoulders. Her frame was lean, muscular in a way that spoke of discipline rather than vanity. Dark hair pulled back in a tight braid, eyes the color of storm clouds, constantly scanning, always watching. Beside her ran Atlas, a massive Belgian Malinois, all muscle and scars, with a torn left ear and a jagged mark across his ribs that looked like it had been made by shrapnel. Because it had been. Atlas was a retired military working dog, a combat veteran who'd served 3 tours in places most people couldn't find on a map. He was her shadow, her anchor, her only friend in a world that had grown too loud and too quiet all at once. They were ghosts. That's what the locals whispered. Ghosts haunting the edges of their peaceful mountain town, disturbing the stillness with their presence. Maya had been a Navy combat controller, one of the few women to make it through the pipeline, to earn the right to stand on the front lines and call in airstrikes with a calmness that belied the chaos around her. She'd been good at it. Too good, maybe. Good enough that she'd volunteered for assignments that broke other operators. Good enough that she'd stayed too long, seen too much, lost too many. The medical discharge papers said severe PTSD and physical injuries sustained in combat. What they didn't say was that she woke up most nights reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. That loud noises made her drop to the ground. That she couldn't be in crowds without her heart trying to punch through her ribcage. That the silence of Silver Creek was supposed to be healing, but mostly it just made the noise in her head louder. The run took them down Main Street every morning, past the antique shop with the faded awning, past the hardware store with the rusted tools in the window, past the single traffic light that blinked yellow in the pre-dawn gloom, and eventually past Sam's Corner Cafe, a small brick building that smelled of fresh bread and brewing coffee even this early in the morning. For the past 3 weeks, something strange had been happening at the cafe. Every single morning, without fail, there was a white paper bag sitting on the back step near the kitchen door. Inside, always the same thing, 2 pieces of bacon, scrambled eggs, and a biscuit, still warm. No note, no name, just food. Maya had initially treated it with suspicion. You didn't survive what she'd survived by trusting unexplained kindness. She'd checked the food for tampering, for poison, watched from a distance to see if it was bait for some kind of trap. But Atlas had other ideas. The dog had smelled it that first morning and whined, a sound Maya hadn't heard from him in months, so she'd let him eat it. And every morning since, the food had been there. She tried to figure out who was leaving it, tried to spot them, to catch them in the act. But whoever it was, they were careful. They came early, left quickly, vanished before Maya could get close enough to see. It became a puzzle, a mystery that cut through the monotony of her days, something to focus on besides the memories that waited in the corners of her mind. Today, she decided to solve it. She stopped running 2 blocks away from the cafe, signaling Atlas with a hand gesture he'd learned in the desert. The dog obeyed instantly, pressing against her leg, his body tense and ready. They moved into the alley beside the cafe, merging with the shadows cast by dumpsters and brick walls. Maya's breathing slowed. Her heart rate dropped. This was familiar territory. Waiting, watching, being invisible. The cold bit through her jacket, but she didn't shiver. Didn't move, just waited with the patience of someone who'd spent hours in sniper hides, motionless, while the world moved around her. 10 minutes passed, then the back door opened. Warm light spilled onto the frost-covered pavement, and a man stepped out. He was young, maybe 26 or 27, with sandy brown hair that fell across his forehead and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. He wore a white apron over a flannel shirt, his hands dusted with flour. In those hands, he carried the familiar white paper bag. This was Sam Mitchell, the owner's son, the one who ran the cafe in the early mornings while his aging father slept in. Maya didn't know his name yet, didn't know that he'd served 2 years in the Peace Corps before coming home to help with the family business. Didn't know that he'd been watching her run past his window every morning for months, wondering what kind of pain put that look in someone's eyes. He looked left, then right, his breath puffing white in the cold air. Then he knelt down and placed the bag on the step, arranging it carefully so it wouldn't tip over. "Stay safe out there, brave girl," he whispered to the empty air. Maya tensed. Beside her, she felt Atlas shift. The dog's ears perked forward, his body vibrating with sudden interest. She put a hand on his collar, ready to hold him back, but then something unexpected happened. Atlas pulled free. Not aggressively, not with the explosive violence he'd shown when postal workers got too close or when strangers approached Maya in the grocery store. No, this was different. He stepped out of the shadows calmly, deliberately, and trotted right up to the young man at the cafe door. Maya's heart lurched. Her hand instinctively reached for the sidearm she no longer carried. Every muscle in her body screamed at her to intervene, to pull Atlas back before he did something that would get them run out of town. Or worse. But Sam didn't scream, didn't run. He looked down at the massive war dog with the torn ear and the scars, and instead of fear, his face broke into the gentlest smile Maya had ever seen. "Hey there," he said softly, kneeling down without hesitation. "I was hoping I'd meet you." Atlas, the dog who'd taken down armed insurgents and cleared buildings under fire, lowered his head and pressed it against Sam's hand. His tail, usually held rigid and alert, began to wag. Slow at first, then faster. Thump, thump, thump against the brick wall. Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was seeing. Atlas didn't trust anyone, hadn't let anyone touch him except Maya in over a year. But here he was, leaning into this stranger's touch like a puppy, his eyes half closed in contentment as Sam scratched behind his good ear. "You're not scary at all, are you?" Sam murmured, running his hands through Atlas's thick fur. "You're just tired, just need someone to be kind to you." That's when Maya stepped out of the shadows. Her boots crunched on gravel and Sam looked up. His eyes widened when he saw her, this tall, lean woman emerging from the darkness like something out of a dream, or a nightmare. But he didn't look afraid. He looked at Atlas, then back at Maya, and his smile didn't fade. It just softened. "He's not dangerous," Sam said, as if Maya was the one who needed reassuring. "He's just been through something terrible, hasn't he?" Maya stood there, frozen. Nobody in this town had ever looked at her like that. Not with fear, not with judgment, but with understanding. With something that looked almost like compassion. "Why?" The word came out rougher than she intended, scraped raw from a throat that didn't speak often enough. Sam tilted his head, confused. "Why what?" "The food every morning, why?" He looked down at Atlas, still petting him, and shrugged. "Because you looked hungry, both of you, and nobody should have to be hungry." It was such a simple answer, so devastatingly simple that Maya felt something crack inside her chest, something she'd been holding together with wire and willpower for months. Years, maybe. "I can pay," she said, her voice tight. "I'm not asking you to. I don't need charity." Sam looked up at her then, really looked at her, and his eyes were clear and honest and entirely without pity. "It's not charity, it's just kindness. There's a difference." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of Atlas's contented panting and the distant call of a crow in the trees. Maya wanted to say thank you, wanted to explain that nobody had shown her kindness in so long she'd forgotten what it felt like. wanted to tell him that his simple act of leaving food on a step had been the only thing getting her through some mornings. But the words wouldn't come. So instead she just nodded, once, sharp and military. Sam smiled again, stood up, and brushed the dog hair off his apron. "I open at 6 if you ever want to come in. Coffee's always fresh, and I make a mean blueberry pancake." Then he turned and walked back into the cafe, the door swinging shut behind him, leaving Maya and Atlas alone in the alley with a bag of warm food and a feeling that something had just shifted. Something important. For the first time since arriving in Silver Creek, the cold didn't feel quite so bitter. What happens when a warrior walks into a room full of civilians who think she's the enemy? The bell above the cafe door chimed as Maya pushed it open 3 days later. She'd spent those days arguing with herself, packing the cabin, trying to convince herself that going inside was a bad idea. That connection was dangerous, that people always disappointed you in the end. But Atlas had other thoughts. The dog had started whining every time they passed the cafe, started looking at her with those dark, knowing eyes that seemed to say, "Just try, just once." So here she was. The cafe went silent the moment she stepped inside. It was like someone had hit a mute button on the world. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Every head turned, and Maya felt the weight of their stares like physical pressure against her skin. The cafe was small, cozy in a way that would have been charming if it wasn't currently filled with people looking at her like she was a predator who'd wandered into their peaceful watering hole. Red vinyl booths lined the walls. Mismatched tables filled the center. The walls were covered with old photographs of Silver Creek from decades past, back when the mines were still open and the town was thriving. The patrons were mostly older folks, retired miners and their wives, the kind of people who'd lived in Silver Creek their whole lives and viewed newcomers with automatic suspicion, especially newcomers like Maya. She could feel their fear, could almost taste it. It was familiar in a way. She'd felt it before in villages overseas when she'd walk through with her rifle and her radio and her cold, professional distance. The fear of people who didn't understand her, who saw only the weapon she represented. But she'd left the weapon behind. She was just trying to get a cup of coffee. Maya moved toward the counter, her posture instinctively straightening, her shoulders squaring. Old habits. Atlas walked beside her, his body pressed against her leg, his eyes scanning the room in perfect synchronization with hers. They were a unit, always had been. Sam was behind the counter, wiping down an espresso machine. When he saw her, his whole face lit up, not with surprise, with genuine happiness. "You came," he said, and there was no performance in it. No false enthusiasm, just real pleasure that she'd taken him up on his invitation. "Coffee," Maya said. Her voice came out too flat, too military. She cleared her throat. "Please." "Absolutely, black." She nodded. How did he know? As Sam poured her coffee from a fresh pot, Maya was acutely aware of the whispers starting up behind her. Low voices, carefully controlled but not careful enough. "That's her. The one from the cabin. Heard she used to be in the military, special forces or something. That dog of hers attacked Jim's Labrador last month." That last one made Maya's jaw tighten. Atlas hadn't attacked anything. Jim's Labrador had come charging at them off-leash, and Atlas had simply positioned himself between Maya and a potential threat. He hadn't bitten, hadn't even growled, but facts didn't matter to people who'd already made up their minds. Sam slid the coffee across the counter and their fingers brushed for just a second. His hands were warm, hers were cold. "Ignore them," he said quietly, just for her. "They're scared of what they don't understand." "They should be," Maya said before she could stop herself. Sam's expression didn't change. "Should they?" She looked at him, really looked. His eyes were hazel, she noticed, flecked with gold and green. They were the kind of eyes that seemed incapable of cruelty. I've done things, Maya said slowly, that would keep them up at night. I don't doubt it. Sam leaned against the counter unbothered. But you're not doing those things now. You're just trying to drink coffee, so how about we start there? It was such a reasonable thing to say. So absurdly, impossibly reasonable that Maya almost laughed. Almost. She took a sip of coffee. It was perfect. Strong, hot, exactly what she needed. Thank you, she managed. You're welcome. Sam hesitated, then added, would you like a muffin? Fresh blueberry just made them. Before Maya could answer, the bell above the door chimed again. A man walked in, tall and thick-shouldered, wearing a sheriff's uniform. Sheriff Brody. Maya recognized him from the grocery store, where he'd watched her with the same wary suspicion cops always gave to people who moved like operators. He saw Maya at the counter and his hand drifted toward his belt. Not to his gun, exactly, but close enough. A territorial gesture. Sam, Brody said, his voice carrying across the cafe. Everything all right here? The implication was clear. Are you safe? Is she threatening you? Sam's expression tightened just slightly. Everything's fine, Sheriff. Just serving a customer. Uh-huh. Brody moved closer, his eyes never leaving Maya. Miss Cross, right? Maya turned to face him fully, and she saw him register the change in her posture. The way she balanced her weight. The way her hands stayed loose and ready at her sides. He was reading her, and she was letting him. Sometimes the best defense was making sure people knew exactly what kind of threat you were. That's right, she said. Got a few complaints about your dog. Folks saying he's aggressive. Atlas has never bitten anyone. Yeah, well, doesn't mean he won't. Military dogs are trained weapons, aren't they? Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. This was how it always went. People saw the scars and the discipline and the danger, and they decided you were the problem before you even opened your mouth. He's retired, Maya said evenly. He's not a weapon anymore. He's just a dog who did his job and earned his peace. Maybe so, but this is a quiet town. People aren't comfortable with women who don't smile enough, Maya interrupted. With dogs that look scary. With anyone who reminds them that there's a world beyond their mountains that isn't all sunshine and good intentions. The cafe went dead silent again. Sheriff Brody's face darkened. Now listen here. Sheriff. Sam's voice cut through the tension like a knife. He stepped out from behind the counter, positioning himself between Maya and Brody in a way that was protective without being confrontational. Maya's not causing any trouble. She's just getting coffee, same as everyone else. Sam, you don't know what kind of person. I know she runs past my cafe every morning at 5 a.m. I know her dog has never once shown aggression unless someone came at them first. And I know she deserves the same respect as anyone else in this town. Sam's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. So unless she's breaking a law, maybe you could let her drink her coffee in peace. The two men stared at each other. Maya watched, something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. When was the last time someone had defended her? When was the last time anyone had stood up for her without expecting something in return? Finally, Brody backed off. He held up his hands in a gesture of surrender, but his eyes remained cold when they landed on Maya. Just keep that dog on a leash, he said. He's always on leash, Maya replied. Brody left, the door chimed, the cafe exhaled. Sam turned back to Maya and she saw the flush on his cheeks, the way his hands were shaking slightly. He wasn't used to confrontation, wasn't built for it, but he'd done it anyway. You didn't have to do that, Maya said quietly. Yeah, Sam replied, I did. They looked at each other. Around them, the cafe slowly returned to its normal hum. People went back to their conversations, though Maya could still feel their eyes on her, still hear the whispers. But something had changed. Sam had made a choice, had publicly aligned himself with her. And in a small town like Silver Creek, that kind of choice mattered. The muffin, Maya said suddenly. I'll take the muffin. Sam's smile returned, smaller this time but no less genuine, coming right up. As he turned to get it, Maya caught Atlas looking up at her. The dog's expression was as close to smug as a dog could get, like he'd known all along that coming inside was the right choice. Maybe he had. Can a moment of violence reveal who someone truly is? 2 weeks passed. Maya found herself at the cafe most mornings now. Not every day, she wasn't ready for that kind of routine, that kind of dependence, but often enough that the regulars stopped glaring and started ignoring her, which felt like progress. Sam would pour her coffee without asking, sometimes add a muffin or a slice of banana bread to her plate without comment. They didn't talk much. Maya wasn't good at small talk, and Sam seemed to understand that silence could be its own kind of conversation. But she learned things about him anyway, small details that added up to a picture. He'd inherited the cafe from his father, who'd had a stroke 2 years ago and couldn't manage the physical demands anymore. Sam baked everything from scratch, starting at 4 in the morning. He liked old jazz music and terrible puns. He'd never left Colorado, but he had a collection of travel books from places he dreamed of seeing someday. And he looked at Maya like she was a person, not a problem. It was dangerous, this slow thawing. Maya could feel it happening and didn't know how to stop it, didn't know if she wanted to. She was walking Atlas through town on a Thursday afternoon, no particular destination in mind when she heard it. A shout. Male voices, rough and angry, coming from the alley behind the hardware store. Her body reacted before her mind caught up, muscles tensed, breathing sharpened. Atlas mirrored her instantly, his body going rigid, his eyes locked on the alley entrance. Maya moved toward the sound, not running, walking with purpose, every sense heightened, cataloging details. 3 male voices, one younger, frightened, smell of alcohol, broken glass crunching underfoot. She turned into the alley and saw them. 3 men, all in their 20s, wearing stained work clothes and hostile expressions. They had someone backed against the wall, someone smaller. As Maya got closer, her blood went cold. Sam. He was holding a bag of flour against his chest, his face pale, trying to make himself smaller. The men were circling him like wolves. "Come on, Sam," one of them slurred. "You got money for fancy coffee beans, you got money to lend us." "I told you, Jake, I don't have cash on me." "Liar." Jake, a thick-necked man with a buzz cut, shoved Sam hard against the brick wall. The flour bag fell, splitting open, white powder exploding across the dirty pavement. "Your family's always had money, always acting better than the rest of us." I'm not," Sam was stammering, his hands up in a placating gesture. He wasn't a fighter, wasn't built for this kind of confrontation. But Maya was. "Step away from him." Her voice cut through the alley like a blade, cold, authoritative, the voice she'd used to give orders in combat zones. All 4 men turned to look at her. The 3 attackers sized her up, a woman alone with a dog, and clearly decided she wasn't a threat. Their mistake. Jake laughed. "This doesn't concern you, lady. Keep walking." "I said step away from him." "Or what?" Another man, this one with a patchy beard, took a step toward her. "You gonna sick your mud on us?" Atlas growled. It was a sound from deep in his chest, primal and unmistakable, a warning. Maya's hand moved to Atlas's collar, holding him back. Not yet. She didn't want this to escalate, but she would if they forced her to. "Last chance," she said quietly. "Walk away." "Who the hell do you think you are?" Jake was drunk enough to be stupid, aggressive enough to be dangerous. He moved toward Maya, his fists clenched. "You think because you played soldier you can." He didn't get to finish. Maya moved. It wasn't flashy, wasn't cinematic. It was pure, efficient violence. She stepped inside his reach, grabbed his wrist, twisted, and used his own momentum to send him face first into the alley wall. He went down hard, groaning. The man with the patchy beard swung at her. Maya ducked, felt the air move over her head, and drove her elbow into his solar plexus. He folded, gasping for air. The third man, smarter than his friends, put his hands up and backed away. "We're done. We're done, all right." Maya didn't move, didn't relax. She stood between them and Sam, her breathing controlled, her body coiled and ready. Atlas stood beside her, teeth bared, every inch the war dog he'd been trained to be. The two conscious men grabbed their groaning friend and hauled him out of the alley, stumbling and cursing. Maya watched them go, making sure they kept going, her body still locked in combat mode. Then she heard Sam behind her. "Maya." She turned. He was standing against the wall, flour dust covering his clothes, his hands shaking. But he wasn't looking at her with fear. He was looking at her with something else. Wonder, maybe, or recognition. "Are you hurt?" Maya asked, her voice still too harsh, too tactical. Sam shook his head. "I'm fine, you just—" "I know," she cut him off. She didn't want to hear it, didn't want to see whatever he was thinking play out on his face. "You should report this." "Maya, they were going to hurt you." "I know." Sam pushed off from the wall, took a step toward her. "You saved me. I did what needed to be done." "That's not nothing." He was closer now, close enough that she could see her reflection in his eyes. "You could have kept walking. Nobody would have blamed you, but you didn't." Maya felt something twisting in her chest. She wanted to leave, wanted to run back to the cabin and the safety of solitude. This was too much, too close. But Atlas pressed against her leg, anchoring her. "I need to make sure you get back safe," she said instead. Sam's smile was shaky but real. "Okay." They walked back to the cafe together, not talking, Atlas trotting between them. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Maya's hands were still shaking slightly from the adrenaline dump, but she kept them steady. When they reached the cafe, Sam turned to her. "Thank you, really. I don't know what would have happened if—" "Don't think about it." "Maya," he said her name carefully like it was something precious. "You're not what people think you are." She almost laughed. "You don't know what I am. Maybe not everything, but I know you're someone who runs every morning with a dog who loves you. I know you drink your coffee black and you read the same book over and over because it's comforting. I know you stopped 3 men from hurting me even though you could have just walked away." He paused. "I know you're kind, even though you pretend you're not." Maya stared at him. Nobody had called her kind in years. Nobody had seen past the armor to whatever was left underneath. "You don't know me," she repeated, but there was no conviction in it. "Then let me," Sam said simply. The words hung in the air between them, an invitation and a challenge all at once. Maya wanted to say yes, wanted to let someone in just once, just to see if she still could. But she'd been broken too many times. "I should go," she said. Sam nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Okay, but Maya, I'm not afraid of you, I never was." She walked away without answering, Atlas at her side, her heart pounding harder than it had during the fight. Because violence, she understood, violence made sense. But this terrified her more than any firefight ever had. What happens when a town demands answers from someone who's only ever known how to fight? The town hall meeting was called 3 days after the alley incident. Word had spread fast, it always did in small towns, and by Saturday evening the old community center was packed. Metal folding chairs arranged in rows, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, American flag hanging limply in the corner. The whole town seemed to be there. Maya saw faces she recognized from the grocery store, the gas station, the cafe, all of them watching, all of them waiting. She sat in the back row, Atlas lying at her feet. She'd gotten the summons, not official but pointed enough from Sheriff Brody himself. "Town wants to discuss the incident," he'd said. "You should be there." Maya knew what this was. A trial, not in a court of law but in the court of public opinion, and she'd already been found guilty before walking through the door. Sam was there too, sitting near the middle with his father, an elderly man in a wheelchair who kept patting Sam's hand reassuringly. When Sam saw Maya, He gave her a small, encouraging smile. It didn't help. Sheriff Brody stood at the front, uncomfortable in his role as moderator. Next to him stood Jake and his two friends, bandaged and bruised but defiant. Jake's nose was taped, probably broken when his face met the wall. "All right, everyone settle down." Brody's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. "We're here to discuss what happened Thursday night between Miss Cross and these three men." "She assaulted us," Jake shouted immediately. "Unprovoked, that crazy woman and her vicious dog attacked us in the street." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Maya felt every eye turned toward her. She kept her face blank, her posture still. This was familiar ground, being judged by people who didn't understand, being condemned for doing what was necessary. "That's a lie." Sam's voice rang out clear and strong. He stood up and Maya saw his father squeeze his hand one more time before letting go. "They were attacking me." Maya stopped them. "Attacking you?" Jake sneered. "We were just talking to you, Sam, having a conversation. You're the one who got all sensitive. You shoved me into a wall and demanded money. Your word against ours." The crowd erupted into arguments. Some people defending Sam, others pointing out that Maya had put three men in the hospital. Well, one in the hospital, two just badly bruised, but facts were already becoming fluid. Maya watched it all with a detached calm that came from years of watching chaos unfold in places far worse than this. "Enough," Brody shouted. The room quieted. He looked at Maya. "Miss Cross, you want to tell your side?" Maya stood slowly. Atlas stood with her, pressed against her leg. She felt the weight of all those eyes, all that judgment, and for a moment she was back in a debriefing room, explaining why she'd called in an airstrike that leveled a building, why civilian casualties were unavoidable, why she'd made the choices she made. "They were going to hurt him," Maya said. Her voice was steady, emotionless. "I intervened. I used the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat." "Neutralize the threat." An older woman in the third row stood up. "Mrs. Henderson, owner of the bakery, you broke Jake's nose. He came at me first. You're trained in combat, you could have killed him. If I wanted to kill him, he'd be dead." The words came out flat, matter of fact. The room went silent. Maya saw the fear flicker across faces, saw them recoil. This was the problem. This was always the problem. She couldn't explain the calculations that happened in her head in moments of violence, couldn't make them understand that she'd actually shown remarkable restraint. To them, she was just confirming their worst fears. "See," Jake said triumphantly, "she's dangerous. She doesn't belong in this town." More murmurs, more whispers. Maya felt the walls closing in, felt the familiar suffocation of being misunderstood, misjudged, rejected by people who'd never walked a mile in her boots. Then Sam spoke again. "She saved my life." Everyone turned to look at him. "You all know me," Sam continued. "I've lived here my whole life, served you coffee every morning, never caused trouble, and Thursday night 3 drunk men cornered me in an alley and threatened me. They shoved me, demanded money, and when I said no, they got violent." His voice cracked slightly. "I was terrified. I thought they were going to really hurt me, and then Maya showed up." He looked directly at her, and Maya saw something in his eyes that made her chest tighten. "She could have walked away," Sam said. "She didn't owe me anything. We barely know each other, but she didn't walk away. She stepped between me and danger and she protected me. Yes, she's strong. Yes, she's capable of violence. But she used that strength to defend someone weaker. That's not dangerous. That's heroic." "She's a killer," someone shouted from the crowd. "She was a soldier," Sam shouted back, his voice rising with rare anger. "She served this country. She put herself in harm's way so people like us could sit here in safety and judge her. And now you want to run her out of town because she used those skills to help someone." Sam calmed down. His father said quietly, "No, Dad, this isn't right." Sam turned to face the crowd fully. "You're all so afraid of her that you can't see what's right in front of you. She's not a monster. She's just a person who's been through hell and came out the other side. And instead of giving her a chance, you're treating her like she's the enemy." Sheriff Brody held up his hands. "All right, everyone needs to. Can I speak?" The voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise. "Maya." Everyone turned to look at her again. She took a breath. This was hard. Harder than breaching a door or calling in coordinates under fire. Harder than anything she'd done in uniform. "I know what you see when you look at me," Maya said slowly. "You see someone broken, someone dangerous, someone who doesn't fit in your peaceful town. And you're right about some of that. I am broken. I do carry violence in my bones. I don't fit." She paused, gathering herself. "I spent 6 years in the military. Did things I'll never talk about, lost people I'll never forget. Came home with scars you can't see and a dog who understands me better than any human ever has. I came to Silver Creek because I needed quiet. I needed space to try to remember how to be a person again." Her voice wavered slightly. "I'm not good at this, at being normal, at small talk and smiling and pretending everything's fine. I know I make you uncomfortable. I know my dog scares you. I know I'm not the kind of neighbor you want." The room was completely silent now. "But I never asked to be your neighbor," Maya continued. "I just asked to be left alone. And when I saw someone in trouble, when I saw Sam in danger, I didn't think about whether helping him would make you like me more. I just did what I was trained to do, protect those who can't protect themselves." She looked around the room, meeting eyes, refusing to look away. "If you want me gone, I'll go. I've been unwelcome places before, but I won't apologize for helping someone. I won't apologize for being what I am, and I won't apologize for surviving." She sat down. Atlas immediately pressed his head into her lap, sensing her distress. Maya buried her hand in his fur, anchoring herself. The silence stretched. Then Sam's father wheeled himself forward. "I'd like to say something." Everyone turned to look at the old man. Robert Mitchell had lived in Silver Creek for 70 years, ran the cafe for 40. His word carried weight. "My son came home Thursday night shaking," Robert said, his voice rough with age but strong with conviction. "Told me what happened, told me how scared he was, and then he told me about this young woman who stepped in when nobody else was there, who put herself at risk to keep him safe." He looked at Maya. "I don't care what uniform you wore or what you did overseas. You protected my boy, my only child. That makes you family in my book." He turned to the crowd. "We're supposed to be a community. Communities look after each other. This woman looked after one of our own. Seems to me we should be thanking her, not running her off." More silence. Then slowly someone started clapping, then another person, then more. Not everyone, not even most, but enough. Sheriff Brody cleared his throat. "All right, I think we've heard enough. Unless there's formal charges." He looked at Jake, who was scowling but shaking his head. "Then we're done here. Meeting adjourned." People started filing out, some still muttering, others looking at Maya with new curiosity rather than fear. Sam pushed through the crowd toward her, his face flushed. "Are you okay?" he asked. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. "That was brave, what you said." "It was true." "Truth usually is brave." Sam hesitated, then extended his hand. "Walk you home." Maya looked at his hand, looked at his face, saw nothing there but genuine care, and slowly, carefully she reached out and took it. His palm was warm, steady. Together, they walked out into the cool night air, Atlas trotting ahead, the mountains standing dark and silent against a sky full of stars. For the first time in years, Maya didn't feel quite so alone. Can broken things build something beautiful? Spring came to Silver Creek like a whispered promise. The snow melted, revealing brown earth that slowly, tentatively turned green. Wildflowers pushed through the frost-hardened ground. The air lost its bitter edge, becoming soft and full of pine. And Maya found herself changing with the seasons. The old Henderson property sat 2 miles outside town, 60 acres of neglected farmland, a barn that leaned precariously to one side, and a house that hadn't seen paint or care in decades. The for sale sign had been there so long it was rusted. The realtor's number faded beyond recognition. Maya stood at the fence line, hands in her jacket pockets, looking out over the overgrown fields. Atlas sniffed around the fence posts, investigating every scent with the thorough attention of a dog who'd once cleared buildings for bombs. "You're really going to buy it?" Sam stood beside her, his shoulder almost touching hers. They'd been doing this lately, finding excuses to be near each other, orbiting like satellites afraid to collide. "Thinking about it," Maya said, which meant yes. She'd already talked to the bank, already had the financing approved, already spent 3 nights lying awake, imagining what this place could become. "It needs a lot of work." "I like work." Sam smiled. "I know you do, but this is a lot, Maya, the roof alone." "I've rebuilt harder things." She said it quietly, but Sam heard the weight behind it. She wasn't just talking about buildings. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip toward the mountains. Then Sam asked the question she'd been waiting for. "What would you do with it if you bought it?" Maya took a breath. This was the part that scared her more than admitting she was broken. This was the part where she had to admit she still had hope. "I want to make it a place for veterans," she said. "The ones like me. The ones who came back but didn't really come back. The ones struggling with PTSD, with reintegration, with finding purpose again." She gestured toward the fields. "We could have dogs here, train them, work with them. Dogs don't care about your rank or your nightmares. They just care about right now." Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then, "That's beautiful." "It's practical." "It's both." He turned to face her fully. "Maya, that's an incredible idea. How can I help?" She looked at him. This man who'd fed her dog before knowing her name, who defended her in front of his entire town, who looked at her like she was worth something beyond her ability to fight. "I don't know," she admitted. I'm not good at accepting help." "I've noticed." His smile was gentle, "but maybe it's time to learn." The renovation started 2 weeks later. Maya bought the property with money she'd saved from her military service, combat pay she'd never spent because there was nothing to spend it on downrange. The first few days, she worked alone, tearing out rotted wood, clearing debris, mapping out what needed to be done. Then people started showing up. Robert Mitchell came first, his wheelchair navigating the dirt path with difficulty but his determination absolute. He brought lumber, paid for from his own pocket. "For the woman who saved my son," he said simply. Then came the local carpenter, a quiet man named George who'd been at the town hall meeting. He didn't explain why he was there, just started measuring the barn's frame, calculating what it would take to stabilize it. Sheriff Brody showed up on a Saturday in civilian clothes carrying a tool belt. "Figured you could use the help," he said gruffly. "And I owe you an apology for before." Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she just handed him a hammer and pointed at the fence that needed repair. Even Mrs. Henderson from the bakery appeared one morning, her initial hostility replaced with something that almost looked like respect. She brought sandwiches for the workers and cookies for Atlas. "Dogs got to eat too," she muttered. Sam was there every day. He'd close the cafe at 2 and drive out to the farm, spending his afternoons helping however he could. He wasn't trained in construction, wasn't particularly handy, but he was stubborn and cheerful and somehow made the hard work feel lighter. They'd work until sunset, then sit on what would eventually be the front porch, drinking coffee from a thermos Sam always brought, watching the sky turn colors that didn't have names. "Tell me about it," Sam said one evening, both of them covered in sawdust and sweat. "The military, if you want." Maya was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "I joined when I was 20, needed purpose, needed to matter." She stared at the mountains. "Got selected for combat controller training. They told us 90% would fail. I didn't. Learn to call in airstrikes, coordinate ground operations, be the bridge between chaos and control. Sounds intense. It was. It was also the best thing I'd ever done. I was good at it, Sam, really good. And for the first time in my life that mattered. She paused. Did 3 tours, Iraq, then Afghanistan twice. Saw things, did things I can't talk about. Lost teammates I considered family. Sam reached over and took her hand. She let him. What happened? He asked gently. Why'd you leave? Last deployment, we were supporting a rescue operation. American contractors taken hostage. My job was to coordinate air support while ground teams moved in. Her voice went flat, distant. Intel was wrong. The building wasn't just contractors. There were families, civilians. By the time we knew, I'd already called in the strike. She stopped. Sam waited. 6 contractors rescued, 14 civilians dead, including 3 children. Her hand was shaking in his. Rules of engagement said I did everything right. Command cleared me, but those kids. Maya. I can't unhear their mothers screaming. Can't unfeel what it was like to stand in those ruins. Can't forgive myself for following orders that felt wrong in my gut but right on paper. Sam squeezed her hand harder. It wasn't your fault. Doesn't matter, it happened, on my watch, my coordinates. She finally looked at him and her eyes were wet. I came home 6 months later, medical discharge for PTSD, nightmares, panic attacks, days where I couldn't get out of bed because the guilt was crushing me. Atlas was the only thing that kept me alive. And you came here to hide. I came here to disappear, she corrected. But then some stubborn cafe owner started feeding my dog, started looking at me like I was human, started making me remember that maybe I could still do something good. Sam pulled her closer until her head rested against his shoulder. You're doing it now. This place, what you're building, it's going to save lives, Maya. Maybe not the ones you lost, but others. That matters. She wanted to argue, wanted to say that nothing could balance those scales. But sitting there, in the ruins of something she was rebuilding, with Sam's steady heartbeat against her ear, she almost believed him. By late summer, the farm was transformed. The barn stood straight, its new roof gleaming. The fences were repaired, the fields cleared. The main house had been gutted and rebuilt into a facility with bunk rooms, a common area, and an office. The sign at the entrance read, Silver Creek K-9 Reintegration Center. The first veterans arrived in September. 5 of them, ranging from Army Rangers to Marine riflemen, all carrying the invisible weight of combat. They were wary at first, suspicious of any program that promised healing. Maya understood. She'd been the same way. But then they met the dogs. Maya had partnered with military working dog rescue organizations, bringing in retired K-9s who needed homes, who needed purpose as much as the veterans did. Atlas became the program's unofficial mascot, his calm presence a testament to what recovery could look like. The veterans learned to train the dogs, to build trust through consistency and patience. They learned that a dog didn't care about their rank, their mistakes, their trauma. A dog cared about the moment, about the treat in your hand, the stick you threw, the gentle way you scratched behind their ears. Maya watched a former Marine Corps sniper, a woman named Jennifer who hadn't smiled since her best friend died in Fallujah, break into tears of joy when the rescue dog she'd been working with finally mastered stay. Watched an Army Ranger with severe PTSD find peace in the simple routine of feeding and walking his assigned dog every morning. This was healing, not quick, not easy, but real. Sam integrated himself into the program seamlessly. He handled the administrative work Maya hated, coordinated with VA services, managed donations that started trickling in as word spread. But mostly, he was just there. A constant, steady presence. A reminder that kindness still existed. One October evening, after the veterans had gone to bed and the dogs were settled in their kennels, Maya and Sam sat on the porch they'd built together. The air was crisp, carrying the first hint of coming winter. Atlas slept at Maya's feet, his chest rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of a dog who felt safe. "You did it," Sam said quietly. "You built something beautiful." Maya looked out at the center, at the lights glowing warm in the bunkhouse windows, at the barn where dogs slept peacefully, at the fields where broken people were learning to be whole again. "We did it," she corrected. "I couldn't have done this alone." Sam reached for her hand. It was automatic now, this gesture of connection. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "I'm in love with you." He said it simply, without drama or expectation, just truth. "I think I have been since that morning in the alley when you let me pet your terrifying war dog, probably before that." Maya's breath caught. She'd known, on some level, had felt it in the way he looked at her, the way he showed up day after day, the way he'd learned to read her silences. But hearing it out loud was different. "Sam, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." She turned to face him fully. "I'm difficult. I'm damaged. I have nightmares. Some mornings I can't speak because the memories are too loud. I'll never be easy to love." "I know." His smile was soft. "But you're worth it. Every difficult, complicated, beautiful piece of you." Maya felt something inside her chest, something that had been frozen for years, finally crack open. "I love you too," she whispered. "I don't know how to do this, don't know how to let someone in this close, but I want to try." Sam leaned in and kissed her, gentle and patient, giving her time to pull away if she needed to. She didn't. Instead, she kissed him back, pouring years of loneliness and hope and fear into that single point of contact. When they finally pulled apart, Sam was grinning. "So, should we tell the veterans we're dadding, or will they just figure it out?" Maya laughed, actually laughed, a sound so rare that Atlas lifted his head in surprise. "They're soldiers, they notice everything, they already know." They sat together in the cooling night, watching stars emerge one by one over the mountains, two broken people who'd found a way to build something whole. "What does home feel like?" Winter returned to Silver Creek, but this time it was different. This time, Maya didn't dread the cold or the isolation. The farm was alive with purpose, with voices, with the sound of dogs barking and veterans laughing and the crunch of boots on fresh snow. The K-9 Reintegration Center had expanded. They now housed 12 veterans at a time, rotating groups every 3 months. Each veteran was paired with a rescue dog, and together they learned trust, routine, responsibility. The transformation Maya witnessed in each group was never the same, but it was always profound. She woke early on a December morning, the kind where frost painted intricate patterns on the windows, and the world felt hushed with snow. Sam was still asleep beside her. He'd started staying over most nights, though he kept clothes at his own place for the sake of his father's delicate sensibilities, and Maya slipped out of bed carefully to avoid waking him. She brewed coffee in the kitchen of the farmhouse they'd renovated together, watching through the window as the sky slowly lightened from black to deep blue to pale gray. Atlas padded over, his nails clicking on the wooden floor, and she scratched his head absently. "Morning, brave boy," she murmured. The same words Sam had whispered to the empty air months ago, when he'd left food for a dog he'd never met. Atlas's tail thumped. He was older now, moving a little slower, but his eyes were still sharp, still watchful, still her partner. The screen door creaked, and Sam emerged wrapped in a thick blanket, hair sticking up at odd angles, holding his own mug of coffee. He didn't say anything, just came to stand beside her, their shoulders touching in comfortable silence. They watched the sun rise together, painting the snow-covered fields in shades of gold and pink. In the bunkhouse, lights were starting to come on. Veterans waking up, starting their day, feeding their dogs. Structure, routine, purpose. "I was thinking," Sam said eventually, his voice still rough with sleep. "Dangerous." He smiled. "About expanding the program, maybe bringing in more dogs, maybe setting up satellite centers in other states. This model works, Maya. People need it. She took a sip of coffee, considering. A year ago, the thought of expanding would have terrified her. Too many people, too much responsibility, too much risk of failure. But now, yeah, she said, let's do it. Sam looked at her, surprise and pride mingling in his expression. Yeah. Yeah, but you're handling the paperwork. Deal. They stood there a while longer, until the cold started seeping through the walls and Atlas began whining for breakfast. Inside, the farmhouse was warm and lived in. Photographs on the walls, veterans with their dogs, group shots from graduation ceremonies, a few of Sam and Maya together. A bookshelf full of training manuals and novels. A couch where Atlas had claimed his territory. Evidence of a life being built. Maya fed Atlas, then started breakfast for the veterans. It was her favorite part of the day, this quiet preparation before everyone gathered. Sam helped, moving around the kitchen with easy familiarity, cracking eggs and flipping pancakes while she fried bacon. The veterans filtered in one by one. Jennifer, the Marine sniper, now working as a K-9 handler for a police department in Denver but visiting for the holidays. Marcus, an Army Ranger who'd arrived 3 months ago barely speaking and now couldn't stop talking about his rescued German Shepherd, Sage. David, a Navy corpsman who'd found purpose in training dogs for veteran PTSD support. They filled the dining table, passing plates and syrup and coffee, their voices overlapping in the comfortable chaos of chosen family. Maya sat at the head of the table, Sam beside her, and looked around at faces that had arrived broken and were slowly remembering how to be whole. Speech, Jennifer called out, grinning. Come on, Commander, give us the words of wisdom. Maya shook her head. I'm not your commander. You kind of are, though, Marcus pointed out. You built this place, you run it. You terrify us all a little bit. A lot, David corrected. She terrifies us a lot. Everyone laughed, including Maya. She'd learned how to do that again, laugh at herself, accept affection without suspicion, be vulnerable without feeling weak. Fine, she said, standing, the table quieted. I'm not good at speeches, you all know that, but since you're insisting. She paused, gathering her thoughts. When I came to Silver Creek, I was running. From my past, from my guilt, from everything that hurt too much to face. I thought if I could just disappear, if I could just be alone, maybe the noise in my head would stop. She looked at Sam, who smiled encouragingly. But isolation isn't healing. It's just another form of hiding. The veterans were listening intently now. This place, what we've built here, it's not magic. It's not going to erase what happened to us downrange. It's not going to bring back the people we lost or undo the things we saw. Her voice was steady but raw. But it gives us something we all need: purpose, community, a reason to get up in the morning besides just surviving. She looked around the table. Every single one of you came here broken. Every single one of you was told you'd never be the same. And you won't be. But that doesn't mean you can't be whole. It just means you're whole in a different way. Jennifer was crying quietly. Marcus was staring at his plate, jaw tight. David had his arm around the veteran next to him. The dogs taught me that, Maya continued. Atlas taught me that. You don't have to be undamaged to be valuable. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You just have to show up, do the work, be honest about where you're struggling, and trust that healing isn't about going back to who you were. It's about becoming who you're meant to be next. She sat down. The silence lasted a beat, then two, then the table erupted in applause. Atlas barked, excited by the noise, and everyone laughed again. After breakfast, Maya walked the property with Sam and Atlas, checking on the dogs, making sure the facilities were ready for the incoming group of veterans next week. The snow crunched under their boots, their breath puffing white in the cold air. That was a good speech, Sam said. It was sappy. It was true. He stopped walking, turned to face her. Maya, I want to ask you something. Her heart did a strange flutter. She'd learned to recognize that tone in his voice. The one that meant something important was coming. Okay. Sam reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Maya's breath stopped. I know we haven't been together that long, Sam said quickly. And I know you're still figuring things out. I know you have bad days and that commitment is scary for you. I get all of that. He opened the box, revealing a simple silver band with a small diamond. But I also know I want to spend the rest of my life with you, building things together, fixing things together, helping people together. Maya stared at the ring, then at Sam, then at Atlas, who was watching them with his head tilted like he was waiting to see what she'd do. Sam, you don't have to answer now. Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know that I'm all in, whenever you're ready. She looked at this man who'd fed her dog before knowing her name, who defended her in front of his entire town, who'd spent months helping her build a dream out of old wood and sheer determination, who'd learned to wake up slowly when she had nightmares, to give her space when the PTSD was bad, to love her without trying to fix her. Yes, she said. Sam blinked. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. I'm terrified and I don't know how to be a wife and I'll probably be terrible at it. But yes. His face broke into the widest smile she'd ever seen. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, and pulled her into a kiss that tasted like coffee and snow and promise. Atlas barked approvingly. That evening they gathered everyone in the common room of the farmhouse. Veterans, dogs, Robert Mitchell, who'd navigated his wheelchair through the snow with impressive determination, even Sheriff Brody and his wife. Mrs. Henderson brought a cake. The town that had once feared Maya now celebrated her. They announced the engagement to cheers and congratulations. Jennifer hugged Maya hard enough to crack ribs. Marcus shook Sam's hand with exaggerated solemnity. "You're a braver man than I am," he said, which earned him a light punch from Maya and more laughter. As the party continued around them, Maya found herself on the porch again, Atlas at her side, looking out over the farm she'd built. The lights glowed warm in every building. Voices and laughter spilled out into the cold night. Dogs barked playfully in the kennels. Home, this was home. Not the cabin where she'd hidden. Not the military where she'd found purpose. Not even the town of Silver Creek itself. But this place, these people, this life she'd constructed from broken pieces. Sam came out to join her, wrapping a blanket around both their shoulders. They stood together in the quiet cold, watching their breath mingle in the air. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Maya was quiet for a long moment, then. "I'm thinking about that morning in the alley, when you put food out for a dog you'd never met, when you showed kindness to something everyone else feared. I saw a hungry dog, seemed simple. It wasn't simple, it was brave." She turned to face him. "You saw past what I was, what Atlas was, to what we needed. Nobody else bothered to look that close." "Well," Sam said, pulling her closer, "I'm glad I did." They kissed, soft and slow, while snow began to fall around them in gentle spirals. Atlas pressed against their legs, completing the circle. Inside, someone had started music. Veterans were dancing with awkward enthusiasm. Dogs were stealing food from unattended plates. Robert was telling war stories from his own service in Vietnam. Life. Messy and imperfect and beautiful. Maya had spent years believing she was too damaged for this. Too broken for love, for community, for peace. She'd worn her trauma like armor, keeping everyone at a distance because distance felt safer than vulnerability. But safety wasn't living, it was just surviving. And she was done surviving. "Come on," Sam said, tugging her toward the door. "You're missing your own engagement party." Maya smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached her eyes, and let him lead her back inside, into the warmth and the noise and the chaos of people who'd become family. As they stepped through the door, she glanced back once more at the farm, at the mountains beyond, at the life she'd built from ruins. Sometimes, she thought, dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. It shows up every morning, it faces its fears, it accepts help, It builds something beautiful from broken pieces. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it leads you home. The door closed behind them, and the farmhouse glowed like a beacon in the winter night, a sanctuary for broken warriors and rescue dogs, and anyone brave enough to believe that healing was possible. Atlas curled up by the fireplace, his belly full, his heart content, surrounded by the sounds of family. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in quiet white. And in Silver Creek, in a renovated farm on the edge of town, a woman who'd once believed she was beyond saving had found something better than redemption. She'd found home,